Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Holmes, and member of the Doctoral Network. Well, today, I don't really know what to say. This is going to be a great interview. I'm excited about it. I am joined by none other than Dr. Raheem R. Lay. Had to put some respect on that name with the R people. Dr. Lay is a veteran clinical therapist with over 20 years of professional field experience, with 18 of those years being spent leading various mental health and therapy initiatives in the U.S. Armed Forces. Thank you for your service, sir. After earning his master's and doctorate in social work, as well as a certificate in empathy and emotional intelligence coaching, Dr. Lay founded not one, but two educational courses designed to help men and women master their emotions and build thriving futures for themselves. Having witnessed empathy coaching transform the destiny of countless individuals, Dr. Lay is thrilled for the opportunity to share his expertise in his self-help book. Drawing on research-backed data, the book is entitled Men, Manage Emotions Naturally with Empathy. It's going to guide boys and men on how to employ emotional intelligence and empathy to grow into respectful, inclusive, and compassionate leaders. That book is going to be followed by none other than H.E.R. Healthy Emotional Regulation and Empathy has no rank. I am excited, as you can tell, guys. I need to calm down. Hold on, I need to woosah. I need some mindfulness strategies right now. I'm excited to talk to Dr. Lay, guys. I'm excited for you guys to hear from Dr. Lay. So without further ado, in your homes, put your hands together, clap emojis. Let's welcome Dr. Raheem R. Lay to the podcast.
Wow, listen, I love that, man. I can get used to that, definitely. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited
That's
to
what's
talk
up.
to you. This is a topic that I am super interested in at this point in my life. I didn't
Mm,
think I would be, but for what I do and what I'm transitioning into in the next couple of years, this is going to be one of the big pieces of how I lay the groundwork for my continuing work in education. So I'm excited to share
yes,
with you. I'm excited for what you stand for. I'm excited about
thank
what
you.
you do. I'm excited about who you represent and what you represent. So before we dive into the deep weeds of
Okay.
Dr. Lay, let's unpack this a little bit and let's go back to the core of that onion, right? So let's talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
young Raheem. How was he raised? Where did he grow up? What were his values and
Mm,
his beliefs
yeah,
as a younger kid? And then we'll get into where you are now.
yeah. So, thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate this. When I signed up, I was on LinkedIn. I saw your program, and the advertisement. I'm like, wait a minute, this is definite to be around other like-minded people who are breaking barriers and pushing the envelope on education and critical thinking and things of that nature. I just thought was amazing.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, Brick City. Born and raised, loved it. For the most part, I was raised by my aunt. My mom and dad, with their own struggles in life, just couldn't keep us grounded, if you will.
Yeah.
Me and my brother, I have an older brother, 2 years older than me. And my aunt, my mom's older sister, stepped in and took us on. And she had 6 kids of her own, and three boys, three girls. And so we definitely had a lot of influence and leadership around us, if you will. Both all three men, my cousins, all were in the military. So that was my first taste of military and what it looked like, them coming home and things of that nature. But I grew up very, very, I questioned everything. And I think that's when my journey kind of started for me, my
Mm.
creativity really. In third grade, I wrote my first play, and it was about it was about 45 pages long, and I was in third grade, and my teachers, I never forget Mr. Cornigan. I went to third grade. I was at Bellsburg Middle School, but I I he told me he was shocked by me writing this, and he couldn't believe I wrote. It's like 45 pages, but he made me read the whole thing. But I was excited to read it because I had so many curse words in it. This was who I was, right? So I was like, this is the one time I get to curse, and but what that taught me even at that time was that, if when it comes to creativity, when it comes to asking questions, when it comes to talking with people, getting to know other people, their situations, and things of that nature. That started for me so early, and I didn't even know it at the time. But then, fast forward to a family reunion, my aunt was like, "Man, you always used to ask questions, you used to piss me off, all of this kind of thing." She was just like, "I'm not surprised why you're a therapist. I'm not surprised why that you took a drawing to that." So at that time, just growing up with my aunt up until I was 14, then I moved in with my grandfather, and I did my whole high school career at Weequahic High School in Newark, New Jersey. And from there, I went to Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, on a track and field scholarship.
Awesome.
And yeah, went into social work, did my bachelor's in social work there. Then I went to join the Army, then to grad school, University of Tennessee, for social work, and then USC for a doctorate in social work. So, but with that journey, of course, my aunt taking care of us, just to kind of go back to that, my aunt taking care of us, we went into the foster care system called DYFS, Division of Youth and Family Services. So back then in the 80s, if your family came and got you, you could still fall into the foster care system, right? And so my first influence as far as a counselor or a therapist, if you will, was social worker, was the social worker that we were assigned. And she stayed in contact with us. She was very genuine. I don't remember her name. I just remember that long leather coat she would always wear. But she was so consistent in our lives at a time where for me, I was 2 years old, 3 years old. So, growing up, I had so many questions, and she was very consistent in making sure that we had the support that we needed. And so it was kind of a no-brainer when I got to college, and it was like, what do you want to do? That was the first profession that actually had an impact in my life. And I said, you know what, I want to go into it. Didn't know I was going to do mental health, but nonetheless, I mean, that's where I ended up.
So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
College first, and then you said military.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, joined the Army, infantryman. And I wanted that. Granted, when I joined the Army, I'm coming off of the SEC, off of running. So I was in tip-top shape, if you will. But me being a 400 meter, 800 meter runner, I never ran 2 miles. So
right.
This is back. This is back in 2000. Right? So the year 2000. So 2001 hasn't happened yet, but I was like, wow, why did I do this to my life? Just because I had a taste of college and I had a taste of freedom, if you will. But I think that's what spearheaded this journey of emotional intelligence and empathy for me, is because when we think about institutions and what it takes to survive, or better yet, to display a level of selflessness when you're dealing with institutions. And I noticed that dynamic with men when it comes to morality, when it comes to being accountable for something, being in charge of something, leading something. There has to be a foundational piece to that. So I learned that literally in the Army as an infantryman, because no one cared about my education. That didn't matter. It was more so, when we go outside this wire and we go green, I need to know you're going to have my back, And so, joining it when I'm 21 at the time, and I'm joining the Army and I'm with these young guys, I was considered the old man, in a bunch. But it was a real good experience. I loved it, and I learned a lot. And when 9/11 happened, I mean, all of us, those who can recall, it was stir of emotions. You felt like, I got to do something. So it was just kind of like that timing. So I did put education on the back burner, and serve my time with the Army.
And I just think about, and we'll have to dive deeper into this. This could really be a very layered, diverse, broad conversation. But as a clinician now, and you talked about being in college and this level of freedom, but as a Black male athlete on a large Southern campus,
Yeah,
I can only
culture shock,
imagine
right?
that experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a culture shock. Interesting enough, even back then, again, me being the one to ask questions and things of that nature, I actually got to sit with a gentleman by the name of James Meredith. He was the first African American to integrate Ole Miss back in the 60s. I didn't even know I had no plans to meet him or anything like that, but it was my junior year, and I didn't know it. Every year, annually, he comes back at the same day and time, if you will, and he comes and he visits Ole Miss, and they talk. He talks to students. He shares his story, and I just so happened to be working in the library, which I wasn't supposed to because I had a scholarship, and you weren't
Right.
allowed to have a work study job, but that stipend wasn't enough. So I did. I totally was cheating, and I was working and I was up in the mezzanine section, and I seen this guy come in with these two big guys, and I'm like, man, see, Appy is a much older guy, but I didn't know who he was. He saw me with my Letterman's jacket on, my Ole Miss Letterman's jacket on, and he asked a little bit about me, and I was just like, who is he? And when he said his name, I was like, oh my God. So I read
Wow.
about him because I'm at Ole Miss. So that's what I would do. I would go up in the mezzanine section. I would get the old yearbooks and I would just read the books. People would have their stories and what they write in those books. And I saw this whole thing play out in the 60s in that yearbook. It's
Wow.
literally sitting in the Ole Miss library. And you can see like all of the not riots, but the all of the white kids standing, making sure he doesn't, come into the school, and got this
Wow.
young black man that did something to me. And I was just like, I cannot believe I'm sitting here talking
Yeah.
to him. But I was sharing my perspective about being at Ole Miss, coming from Jersey, first and foremost, from Newark, New Jersey, where um, just to be honest, race wasn't it wasn't something that was in our face, or maybe I was too young or ignorant to really spot it. I understand institutional racism. I know that this was more institutional in nature up north. It wasn't
Mhm.
out in your face.
Right.
And then at Ole Miss, it was there. But Ole Miss in and of itself, I mean, you would have swore they put a people from all over the world came to Ole Miss, and
There's
we knew
something in
nothing
there.
about this whole race. We were just like, but I saw it when you would step outside,
Yeah.
Ole Miss, and you would go to different areas. I wanted to go see Elvis's old home in Tupelo, and that was my first time seeing like a real KKK.
Yeah.
The 1998 at this time, 1999. And that
Wow.
was shocking. I was just shocked by it. But to definitely to meet James Meredith and to talk to him and really hear what his mindset was like back then and everything, that kind of spearheaded my vision. That okay, there are some forces that are bigger and more important than myself, and I need to understand what this selflessness is about so that
Yeah.
I'll be able to embrace change. I realized it at that time, and I don't think I ever look back after that
Yeah.
conversation with him.
That's powerful.
Yeah,
And so you leave Mississippi, you go to Tennessee, like you said. Um,
yeah. Well, I went. I was Army
Military.
first. Yep, I did that for 4 years. Then I got out and went into inactive ready reserve and went for my master's, University of Tennessee.
And why
Yeah.
Tennessee?
Uh, SEC. It sounds so crazy saying that now. I cannot believe that was my reason though. I wanted to stay in the SEC, and Ole Miss did not have a master's level social work program. And so yeah, I went to a neighboring, went up there, and it was bleeding orange. It was so
Yeah.
hilarious. The highway, not the highway, but the street on campus was Peyton Manning's jersey number. So you
Wow.
couldn't go beyond, you couldn't go faster. I think it was 18 or something like that. You couldn't go faster than that. It
Wow.
was just hilarious, but it was much bigger than Ole Miss, definitely. But going there for grad school was all business now. So I didn't get to really turn up like we did
Right.
in undergrad.
And
But
you're not that 18-year-old young man anymore. Like you've gone through the
man, I was
military,
grown. Yeah,
structured, now coming back. Now you're
yeah,
coming in focused, like laser focused.
yeah, yeah. And keep in mind, 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Everything changed then. So it was definitely, I had a totally different perspective during that time. And so, but crazy enough, I when I finished grad school, because I still owe time to the Army, I went back into the Army and I stayed with the Army to 2009. And from 2009 to now, Air Force.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
So
doing great work.
yeah, yeah. And it's great. It's amazing. The military is amazing. And I always tell people, I mean, granted, it is an institution,
Yeah.
but the institution comes with its own values and beliefs, and your willingness to conform to it is what's going to separate you from the others.
Yeah.
There is a distinct reason why anybody sees you in uniform. First thing they say is thank you for your service.
Yeah.
They know that selflessness,
Yeah.
what it takes. And I think I strongly encourage, and you're in education, so that's an institution as well. That's one of the things I push in emotional intelligence as well when I'm talking to young men is understanding what selflessness is, and that when you join an institution, your mindset has to be, how can I best serve this institution?
Yeah.
As a result, you'll get what you deserve in return, but your mindset should be, how can I serve versus what
Yeah.
can this do for me? That mentality just doesn't work when you're talking about being productive and competent in our
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. So you get your master's.
Mhm.
Something inside of you, something says, Raheem, I feel it, brother. There's a doctor inside of you. And the call was made and you answered the call. Why?
Yeah. That journey took me. There is twofold, and I want to be transparent about this, because the one thing I appreciate about social work is its diversity. It is a field of work that a lot of men do not. You don't see a lot of men in. I mean, I think we're like 7%. Black men, and lower than that. But it's a great field to be on the ground and understanding how these wicked problems are formulating. That's the one job that gives it to you right in your face.
Yeah.
What I loved about the doctoral program at USC, aside from the diversity, was the challenge that it was presenting. And I think there's something to be said about obtaining the highest level of education in a specific discipline.
Yeah.
That says something about the individual. Yes, I think it's great to add the title and everything, but when it's time to do the work, the way people look at you is different. The expectations are greater. And so I was in a training, and one of my mentors, she had just finished her PhD in social work through AFIT, which is the Air Force's Institute of Technology, like scholarship.
Mhm.
And she was working on implementing a certain program for our special operators, individuals who have very high vis, high stress type work for the military, that was going to help them to evaluate their overall performance and effectiveness and things of that nature. And she was so passionate about it. And I really loved the structure that she presented throughout her journey in getting her PhD. I did see a different level of discipline with her. And then I saw a level of fearlessness as well. And she probably would tell you like, no, I was always like that, but I think I saw something different, and that sparked my interest. So I started to do my research and was like, with social workers, once you get your master's and you get licensed, you really don't need a doctorate.
Right.
Granted, if you're going into teaching and you want to become a professor, or you want to research, you want to get published and things of that nature, yes, you may want to pursue that angle. But for the most part, many social workers, that's very optional compared to like psychologists, where you need that
Right.
either PsyD or PhD to even do the job. So I have my license. I'm clinically licensed. I'm board certified as well. So I really didn't need that. It was more so challenging myself, um, curious about what else am I missing in the field of social work, because I have been a clinical therapist, social worker for the military, which is a totally different community than the civilian sector. Okay, most of our people are very healthy. And so when it comes to mental health, you don't get to see a lot of the um, diagnoses and issues that you would see in the civilian sector, right? Because they wouldn't be in the military if they did.
Right.
Not that I feel like we were cheated out of that, because I don't think we were, but because we are given a lot of leadership opportunities and things and leading people. But to go into a level of education where you are sitting down and critically thinking with individuals on the same platform. I think that says something. It reminds me with track and field. In high school, I kind of ran everything, and and I won a lot, and it was fun. You get to college, everybody's won state.
Right.
Everybody's fast. Now you're losing. You're running fast time, but you're not coming in first, kind of thing. I really felt that even in a doctoral program, with like, okay, everybody has a master's. Everybody here has experience. Everybody here there is no separation, if you will. It's only,
Right.
can we perform and actually work towards a common goal? And I just love that atmosphere that USC, University of Southern California. I love that atmosphere that they presented, um, or they provided. And it actually helped me as a leader and as a clinician in the military as well, because it gave me an opportunity to not only take a chance with new tools to apply to my
Mhm.
tool belt of when it comes to therapy, but then also when you're sitting in multidisciplinary teams, and we go by rank, so nobody's calling you Dr. So and so, right? They call you by your rank, but still, individuals knowing that you attain that level of education, they know that you're bringing something new to the table. So it really opens the door for more discussion when it
Yeah.
came to social work and what role do we play in a multidisciplinary setting.
Mhm. And I love what you said, because you didn't need it, right? But you
Right, right.
understood that if you earned it, it came with a level of respect. But
Mhm,
just based off what I know about you so far, you
mhm.
understood that it came and you were willing to take the responsibility and carry it on your back.
Had to, yeah, yeah. I think that's the challenge, and that's what I see. Again, most of my therapy has been with men and women, but
Yeah.
the military is 80% or so men, right? So the majority of my patients are men, and I can see so many men, like, as far as the greatness in them beyond the uniform. It just comes along with the territory, and they want to
Yeah.
take it on, but there is this level of emotional management. Um, there's nothing against medications and things of that nature, but I'm talking about learning to respect your emotions, um, by employing certain skills day to day to improve your lifestyle, so that um, each day your emotions are managed well. Each day you hold yourself accountable for how you respond to things. Um, I felt like that was lagging not only in our culture, but just in the environment in general. And I saw that in and out of uniform, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that drew a level of, I want to, if I use the word passion, and I will feel like a hypocrite to some of the guys that's already going through my academy, is that because I tell people like, motivation is good, but it wavers. It's not strong enough. Discipline has been the number one strength, and I want individuals, men and women, to focus on employing these skills from a disciplinary standpoint, not from a motivational standpoint. Motivation is okay, it's good,
Yeah.
but it's not substantial compared to discipline, right? So, but I'll be honest that motivation is what got me to, you know what, I, I'm just going to apply. If I get
Yeah.
in, great. If I don't, okay, I still got a job. That's how I was
Right.
thinking. But but it was humbling. It was a humbling experience to be back in school, to be back thinking at that level, um, and for professors to demand that much out of you. As an older man, it was a little different, It's
Yeah.
like, man, I don't, but the discipline is where, my wife would tell me, she was like, man, to see you work to the wee hours, writing and doing all of these things. And then boom, as soon as I graduated, she jumps and gets her master's, and it was like boom, boom.
Ah,
And I was, I just thought that was
no,
empowering.
yeah. Story. I had, live life, husband, father. When I finished, literally next semester. And so that is literally exactly how that happened. I finished. She's like, okay, my turn. And she just jumped right in. I was like, wait a minute. Can I get a reprieve so we can just I need some.
Man.
I do want to ask you this because I us to get an understanding of who you are, some of your layered experiences as a child, then as a man in college, then this whole world of infantrymen, right?
Mm.
You didn't say I'm this second lieutenant, or you say captain. You talk about being an officer. You talk about being an infantryman, and that level of impact, that experience is totally different than those who are sitting up in some of those higher echelon, super, I would call it C-suites of the military, right?
Right.
Um, I think you bring something to the table as it relates to being a man and emotional intelligence and empathy. And so I want you to talk a little bit now as you're past a doctorate, you're doing this work, and as you see people, why do you continue to see this work to be so important, and what's motivating you to want to do more?
So yeah, so this is where first so while I was in the doctoral program, I focused on the interconnectedness between inner and out groups, and
Mm,
I specifically focused on um, African American communities and police. I
wow.
wanted to understand what was the driving force between these two um, communities, if you will. And so I
Yeah.
wrote a piece that it was called Black and Blue Personality Disorder. And and this was me just really freelancing. I really did not I had no rhyme or reason behind it, but this what kind of started my curiosity as to what was the mentality or the mindset for African Americans when it came to police, and vice versa. Who, when it came to the inner group and out group, and what in group and out group. And one of the things I came to realize was that the inability to not understand the two groups. One
Mm,
wasn't willing to understand the other, and vice versa. And that's what charged my reasoning at that time, was like, you know what, something is up with this empathy, this soft skill that we don't talk a lot about. For one, we sure as heck don't talk about it in the military. And I fell short on that as well during my deployments and downrange, and just my mentality. I lacked empathy. Granted, it was something that I felt when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to lack of trust, when it comes to the inability to build rapport to establish a healthy rapport and boundaries between two groups. The one intervention that really creates a foundation for that to even start happening is empathy. And then from there, of course, I moved into the emotional intelligence. But when I discovered that and going through that research and just learning and doing interviews, I interviewed a lot of police officers. And when I saw it was more and more evident, I saw this lack of empathy. I saw this sense of entitlement. I saw this exploitative behavior in certain career fields, if you will. But I started seeing it even more. And I said, you know what? I have to do something, So I first, emotional intelligence came later. I first started with empathy. And as part of my dissertation, what I ended up doing was taking the research and designing a certified empathy program for police academy graduates. And so what was interesting about empathy is, of course, it does take a level of emotional intelligence to be able to understand someone else, right? Understand an individual. But more importantly, is having the ability to feel as someone versus for someone. And I love that concept, and I loved to see it in action, in play. So there were two things that took place in my my as I moved into understanding more about how to apply empathy to the different work environments, if you will, or basically the main foundation to just communication between two individuals of different groups, if you will. I saw a lot of material, of course, in my research that focused on employing empathy at a very young age, childhood specifically. And there were some courses. I went to some schools to see what they had. But I did this 10-step course for third graders, third grade to sixth grade. This 10-step course that teaches them how to employ empathy, and that was my first niche into it. And it's like, okay, as I started to see change in vocabulary change, which was the biggest piece, the vocabulary changing amongst young children, I was like, okay, I think we can elevate this and take it up a notch. And so when I introduced this to the police departments, there were a couple. I reached out to a police department in Maine, the one in Los Angeles, and then in Houston, Texas, and San Antonio, now Texas as well, just to get some feedback from them, like, from an academy standpoint, do you think that young officers coming in who wanting to be police officers, going through their training and their education as they go through the police academy, do you think that this is something that useful tools that they would use when they get out there into the workforce? And so more times than not, I got positive feedback. So I said, okay, yeah, I do need to move with this. I think this would be great. So it was a 6-week course at first. But given the fact that police academies are usually 32 weeks, roughly, they're jam-packed. They have a lot of good training in there and everything. I, without losing its effectiveness, I took it down to 2 weeks, just because 2 weeks 2 weeks did cover a lot of the material. There was a part of the program that required Academy cadets to go out into the communities and establish rapport, communicate with people without a weapon and none of that. But they are out in the communities and they're just meeting the leaders of those communities. They're going into the different organizations in the community and they're volunteering their time. They're becoming mentors as well. And what I've noticed is that, and I give you a story on how it actually unfolded, but what I noticed is that when you are on a first name basis with an individual, it's very hard to have negative response to that individual. And case in point is I was doing a beat with a police officer. And it was around it was dark. So it had to be around 8, 9 o'clock at night. And we were riding, he was talking. He stopped the car because he saw a young man walking, the back of him. Did not see the
Mhm.
front. I didn't see the front. He stopped the car. He gets out the car. He calls his name. When he
Oh,
calls his
goodness.
name, the individual turns around. He says, "What are you doing out? It's late. Mom's gonna be worried. You need to get home," kind of thing. And when he got back in the car, I looked at him and I said, "How did you know that was him?" And he was just like, "Man, I know his walk anywhere, just from spending time with him."
Yeah. Yeah.
Just from spending time with him. And I said, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If he didn't know him, I'm not sure. I don't know what would have happened. But nonetheless, because he knew him, because he knew him down to his walk, it was enough for him to just say, "Hey, get home, mom gonna be worried,"
Yeah.
versus getting up on him, don't know him. So now you gotta pose a posture that is very threatening. The other side don't trust police. So now he's anxious, and now we got a whole different situation, if you will. And so to avoid that, being able to understand an individual, being able to feel as another person, not sympathy, not feeling for someone, but feeling as another individual is more impactful and more powerful when it comes to intergroup contact than anything else. From their birth, emotional intelligence and accountability. And that's the tagline of my book for her, Healthy Emotional Regulation, is emotional accountability is your responsibility because you have to take ownership of how you respond to situations, how you respond to people's words, how you respond to people's actions, how you respond to things that's outside your control. That self-awareness, that relationship management, that self-management, all of those things are very critical when it comes to emotional intelligence. And so um, with the emotional intelligence piece, this is I wanted to focus on men and boys, which is why it was called Men, because these are all behavioral modification. None of it is, there's no medicines, there's nothing outside. This is saying if we went into the woods, we can actually employ each of these skills.
Yeah.
I wanted it
Yeah.
to whereas no matter, and this is something that I learned in the military, is that we focus on fitness a lot. And no matter where they send us in this world, we have to still be able to perform. They don't
Yeah.
care if you're in South Korea. They don't care if you're in Afghanistan. They don't care if you're in Dagon, Texas. Doesn't matter. You have to apply the same level of discipline no matter where you go. So that's why I thought, you know what, we're going to manage emotions, but we're going to do this naturally. We're going to do this. You're going to take this any and everywhere you go. So you can never say, I did not know, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and so with the emotional intelligence, I have an academy. It's called M.E.N, but it's an academy for managing emotions naturally. I ran one session so far, which was great. It was 13 guys. It was my first time with it, so it was more dialogue than anything, but I think the response was overwhelming. And I said, okay, this is definitely something I want to pursue full time when I'm done with the military, and that next journey is being more of an educator and living a life myself. I
Mhm.
apply all of the things that I'm teaching. I actually apply it in my life. You know, and so when I was faced with adversity, I did turn to a lot of the things that I either wrote about or learned about or whatever have you. But understand this: education is not education if you don't apply what you learn,
Yeah.
right? I know I learned a lot of things in school. I didn't apply those things, so I cannot say I'm educated in them, right? I cannot sit there and say, because most people would agree that the best education is experience.
Yeah.
Well,
Most definitely.
if that is, then you got to apply what it is you learning. Then, if you don't ever apply it, you cannot say you're educated in that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I push back on people when they say they're educated about things, and it's like, are you applying it? If you are educated in it and you got these different life experiences, are you applying what it is you learned, you know,
Yeah.
in order to get the outcomes that you desire, right? And so I saw men and young boys who desired so much in life, but they had no idea how to get there, had no idea how to apply
Yeah.
discipline selflessness, which is the biggest thing. And my course teaches what selflessness really is,
Yeah.
because you will have to learn to trust. And it's not so much trusting environment, it's trusting your decision making.
Yeah.
And that is something that, for many people who have been through trauma, in my mental health experience, most people have had some form of trauma in their lives growing up. And the biggest thing to get that's usually voided is trust.
Yeah.
And so I need to bring that back to the center of the conversation. Speaking of, well, yeah, I guess I can share that later, but I wanted to bring that to the center. And the way that we can do that is by focusing on emotional intelligence and empathy.
Yeah. You've said so many things that, I mean, I don't even know where to start. So maybe the first thing I want to say is with men, especially black men,
Mm, mm,
you focus on empathy, you talk about emotional intelligence. And I love the fact that many men, black men, are opening themselves up to stripping away this facade, stripping away what the world told them that they can't feel, they can't emote, right? That they
mm,
should connect with their emotions. It's a natural thing to do. And
mhm.
we almost felt like we weren't allowed to do it because we were supposed to be this and that. But how do you do all of that, as you say, and lead and have empathy if you can't connect? One of the aspects of leadership that people miss, leadership is about service.
That selfless, that's, yeah,
That's
that's the
that's
biggest piece.
what we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how can we be selfless and serve others when we can't connect emotionally and have empathy for them and be emotionally intelligent to interact, to hear their needs, and then to meet the need?
Man, the first part of self-awareness is learning exactly what a trigger is.
Yeah.
I mean, this word trigger has gotten so much attention
Mm.
lately. And here's what I would say about emotions. Men, believe it or not, express emotions very well. The problem is we don't, what I teach is not to express but process your emotions,
Yes.
not to express them. You see, we lead the nation in homicide. We lead the nation when it comes to drugs, alcohol. We lead the nation when it comes to suicide. We lead the nation when it comes to prison. We Men have no problem expressing their emotions. It's just when you teach them that, you have to change your vocabulary and what that looks like. Um, that is where that's the first part, changing your vocabulary and knowing exactly how to express your feelings. I always, in my therapy sessions, when I hear people say, I feel like, or I feel that, I know that they're thinking. I know that they're not identifying with their emotions. And I always stop them right there. After I feel, it should be, I feel hurt. I feel misled. I feel bitter. I feel whatever emotion you are actually identifying with, because we're going to have to break that down. We're going to have to unpack and go dive deep with that. So the biggest part behind that is the triggers, and triggers are important. I get that. However, in order to have a trigger, you must first own the button, you know? And most people do not explore their buttons. They can acknowledge when someone pushes them. They
Mhm.
can acknowledge when, something happens as a result, button gets pushed. As a result of that, a certain behavior is going to happen,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's avoidance, whether it's all avoidance at the end of the day. But when we talk about accountability, when we talk about being able to understand another individual, we want individuals to learn how to explore the button. We want them
Yeah.
to learn how to recognize it should be a talk like, when you do that, that literally reminds me of my mom and how she used to always accuse me of doing this, and this, and
Yeah.
how she would hit first and ask questions later. And so I apologize if I, you know, reacted with
Mm-hmm.
this aggression, but that was a trigger.
Yeah.
Okay. If they don't know the buttons, the trigger would be um, because you were getting all bucked at me or whatever have you, you made me do this or whatever, Um, but once we start revealing, okay, let's unpack that. Let's see exactly where that trigger is attached to a button. What button is that? Where did that button come from?
Yeah.
99% of the time it's coming from childhood.
Yeah.
It's just that now if you at 8 years old are doing the same thing at 48 years old, we have a problem. You managed to get away with that for 40 years
Yeah.
and nobody said anything. Like, that is, and once they start revealing that, it's like, oh snap, I had no idea it was that. The button is what we take accountability for.
Yeah.
Trick, acknowledge it, process it. Man, you know what? Do not do that, because yes, that brings up old memories of da 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 da. What it makes me feel intimidated. It makes me feel fearful, as though I got to defend myself, and therefore, now you're processing it. And so another part that we teach in the academy is to respect your feelings, but not give them power. And
Yes.
that's usually a big one that people, we spend the most time on that section, to be honest. Learning to respect your emotions, learning to respect your feelings, but not giving them power to the point where you're now reacting off of them. And we break that down. We show video what that looks like, but then we do role play, because I do want individuals to understand this is what it looks like in your basic conversation. So in emotional intelligence, under the 4 pillars, where they talk about relationship management, that's one of them. you know why give your emotions power? For what? What does it do? Now, if you've been in an environment that has allowed that for most of your life, okay, I get it. We got to unlearn. We're going to have to unlearn that and learn new things. Malcolm
Yeah.
Gladwell, he's somebody that, he wrote The Outliers. You ever read that you read that book,
I haven't read that
The
book.
Outliers? He talked about the 10,000 hour rule. And I know this 10,000 hour rule has been debunked so many times, but I still love it. And it says, if you want to be an expert at something, you have to apply at least 10,000 hours of intense focus and dedication to that skill in order to become an expert. And what I reveal to individuals after I let them, tell them about that, but what I reveal to individuals is like, you're 40 now, and you've just identified that this is something you've been doing since you were 7. Would you say that you're an expert in that? Yeah, yeah, I am an expert. Yeah, you're an expert at reacting that way. To
Yeah.
unlearn that, we're Americans, we don't like change like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to unlearn that is hard to do. But if you take the approach of the 10,000 hour rule, I do believe, again, that it is effective to a certain degree. You
Yeah.
know, I do find it effective. So, so it's a lot of good material in there, but I really want people to come away with, whether it's the book, whether it's the training, I want them to come away that my, that emotional accountability is actually my responsibility and nobody else's. I can't
Yeah.
put it off on no one else. They may have triggered something, but if I reacted, what button is that? How did I give it so much power?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I want people to walk away with. Especially when we look in today's society, when we talk about marriage, relationships, and how we're struggling with these things. We're struggling to get along with one another. I really think that has a lot to do with the lack of empathy and emotional intelligence in our society.
Yeah. And when I just hear you think, I'm processing, right? And
Mm.
and what I hear that you say without saying is that you just have to be open to the possibility that what you're doing may not be received properly, may be sending a
Man,
negative message to somebody else that you're in relationship with that is not your intent. And once
that's
you
not the
can slip
intent.
away and acknowledge it, then you can make the change. But if you're not open to the idea that you can do things differently, then you won't.
Man, that whole "you take me as I am" or "this is just me,"
Yeah. Just keeping
very
it real.
egocentric. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I challenge that so much.
Yeah.
I push back on that in a healthy way, but my journey with empathy, I mean, I lacked empathy significantly. And here I did. I have a wife, a loving wife. I have a daughter, and when from a leadership standpoint, coming from the Army, it was more like, we say the term shut up and color, but it was just that we got work to do. Let's get it done. When I became a clinician and being a leader, being in a leadership role, I can honestly say, full transparency, that I lacked empathy, and it hurt me. It hurt me in my connection with people. So I had to take accountability for that. And my way of taking accountability was getting that education, becoming a certified coach with emotional intelligence and empathy. Like, I'm putting myself in the ring, and I'm like, I'm gonna hold myself accountable. It's definitely, it does take work. But I can look myself in the mirror and say, okay, you know what? Where did I go wrong in that? Why did I respond that way? And I could break that down on myself. So doing that for myself, it is easier to do it with others. I do find myself being able to understand people more, and not get offended by it or not get triggered by it and things of that nature. Is I know it's a tough thing to do, but for men and young boys, especially growing up before they become men, society puts a lot on us. They do expect a lot of us, and I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, and someone else could disagree with that, but I don't really disagree with that. But what I saw, the upside that I saw though, is that there are a lot of men who want that accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
They're just wondering, okay, teach me how to process this so that when the next situation happens, I have a healthier response to it. And so taking on that level of responsibility, to me, is, when they talk about manhood, I think that is something any and everyone in our society will benefit from.
I think I'm a very visual person. And so when I hear you talk about triggers and buttons, and those triggers are to a button of things that we've learned in our past, most definitely likely childhood. I think what you're offering is, you've got this panel of buttons to the right, which is your past, but then you're creating a whole new panel of buttons on the left, which are the new skills that you've learned. And so when the trigger hits that button, then you come over here and you activate your new button,
It
diffuse,
is
giving that value.
That's it. Now you take accountability. Now you can't say it's because he was raised without a father. We know how detrimental that is, yes, in society. However, as an adult, you actually know right from wrong. We all do, more times than not. We get into, that's one of the sections we talk about, is a mistake and a poor choice. I'm totally giving away this stuff, but nonetheless, when we talk about a mistake and a poor choice, it's so funny, right? Because I always learn, well, not always learn, but I find mistakes. I find that adults really make more poor choices than mistakes. I when I look at a mistake, I literally think an individual who made a decision that has no idea what the outcome could be. And it made me think about my little girl, 4 years old. She did not touch the eye on the stove, but she definitely was curious about that color, But I took it a step further, especially given this example, as far as what a mistake looks like, is if she's never touched the eye on the stove, if she touches that eye on the stove and she gets burned, she's crying. My response is going to be, I'm going to coddle her. I'm going to, put some water, run some water and all of that, But if she comes back 2 weeks and touch that eye again, my response will be totally different, right? It's like, you know better. Why would you touch that again, right? To me, that's the poor choice. You actually think you're going to have a different outcome, The first time, fair game. She didn't know. As adults, we actually know this could go right or left. What will make us go left with it? I have no idea, But when it comes to when we can accept the fact that, yes, we make poor choices, but we can recover from poor choices by taking accountability of it. Mistakes, we learn from those. Poor choices, because you actually knew you could have went right with that. You could have saved yourself this heartache kind of thing. Now we got to put tools there to help you heal from that wound, if you will. Again, mistakes, we learn from those. All right, never do that again. and it probably will never do it again. Okay, great, or you didn't know any better. You didn't know what can happen or whatever. But I see kids doing a lot of that. I rarely ever see adults making a genuine mistake where they did not know, they had no clue of what the outcome could be. And so we challenge, we bring that out of individuals to help them to understand when it comes to emotional accountability and how no one can take that from you. How you, my my wife, when she comes to me and she says, "Don't get upset, but I did so and so and so and so." Yo, look, just right now, just feeling that because it just happened. That is, I can react to her, or I can.
Yeah.
The fact that you said don't get upset, that means you knew.
You already
The
knew.
fact
Yeah.
that you still made that decision, we laughed about it. We have talk time at night. It's like 9:30. We like have this talk time where we get to talk. And when she did that, and we were cracking up laughing because I was like, man, the nerve that you actually know is wrong and you still do it. But I know she has good intent. I know she has good intent. Like, man, I felt like you can really use it. And it's more so like when it comes to my wife is in medicine. And when she talked to her colleagues and she talked about medicine, I'm like, I don't want I don't want them knowing my medical. It could be an autoimmune, right? Autoimmune, which I do. I mean, it's full disclosure. I mean, I do. I have an autoimmune condition, and she gets to talk to somebody that don't know me. She's like, "Yep, my husband got an autoimmune condition. So what do we do about this and this and this?" I know she means well,
Right.
but the fact that when she don't get upset, but so and so got an idea that I would like for you to try for your. I'm like, "Oh yeah, how'd you find that out?" She's like, "Yeah, I told her." And but I know she means well, right? But nonetheless, though, when it comes to mistakes and poor choices kind of thing, we do harp on that in the training because for some reason when we say it's a mistake, we literally, it was a mistake. I didn't know. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you did actually. You actually
Yeah.
did know it can go left, and you
Mhm.
still made that decision. We want them to own that. And that just slows the thought process down from the impulse, and that's where the self-awareness comes back to. So yeah, it's fun times though.
I love this, man. This is some really good work. I just love who you're catering to. I love what you bring to the table, and I
Yeah,
love that you have a real experience of your own that you will
exactly.
communicate with transparency about. I think that's the best.
Yeah.
So 5, 10 years down the road,
Mm.
where do you see your legacy being with this work?
It the one goal I do have, and I still have it, even though I did deviate a little bit from it, I'm going to come back to it, is that I would love 10 years from now, I would love for every single police academy in our country to have a foundational empathy certification program um, for that line of work, really for any work that requires a level of, that's pretty much a high vis, high intense type job or high ops tempo type job, if you will. But I honestly believe that this relationship between police and communities, for it to be going on as long as it has been, um, something has to be done. If it's not happening, then the illusion of it.
Yeah.
If it's not happening, then the anxiety that comes along with the
Mhm.
idea of working in this community or responding to an officer in the community. Like there's something there, regardless of the fact. But I definitely see empathy being the foundation of communication in corporations, businesses, and you got to understand too, when we talk about lack of empathy, when we talk about narcissism, we see this a lot of. It's a buzzword. I get it, but people have to understand that when we live in a world or in a society where capitalism to really we live in a society where we capitalize off of everything. This is
Yeah.
just what it is, you know. It takes a lack of, if you will, empathy and understanding to capitalize.
Mhm.
I really need people to understand that it's an uphill fight,
Yeah.
honestly. On one hand, we're saying, no, we want you to be able to understand. We have yet to crack the code on as to how can we, and maybe somebody did, and maybe that's just more research I have to do, but I I've seen in most businesses, in anything that's dealing with money, understanding is really off the table. It doesn't carry as much weight. Um, and so when I mention the narcissism is because what I saw when it comes to a lack of empathy, immediately you see this sense of entitlement. When you lack empathy, when you lack the ability to understand someone, you automatically are thinking um, that this person is beneath, if you will, or this person situation is at their own fault, or whatever it may be. There is this level of entitlement that comes into play, that I can act like this and nothing will happen. So if we
Mhm.
see police officers not held accountable, that is that level of that's the
Right.
entitlement there, you know, that you can get away with, you know, whatever have you. There is a exploitative behavior that comes along with it, you know, and so, but the first thing is the lack of empathy. And so when if we see 10 years down the road, as I'm looking at spearheading emotional intelligence and empathy and making this the cornerstone for conversation and communication in businesses, organizations, institutions, no matter what, at the basic level, you must know how to communicate. I honestly believe you're going to see a decrease in a lot of the wicked problems that we face in our society today. And I'm talking about from bullying on up, you name it. It's automatically going to be a decrease
Yeah.
by design when
Yeah.
you implement that. So, I truly hope, that of course more clinicians, more coaches, more people who are inspired to really look into the power of empathy, not to assume you have it already.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many people I've ran across that said they know about this and they have it. They do it all the time. And I'm just like, as I'm exploring it, I'm realizing you literally are showing sympathy. It's not empathy at all. And once I reveal that, it's like a mute, and it's
Mhm.
I can go on with that one. But nonetheless, 10 years down the road, yes, I definitely see my the academy, the shoot, even social media, using social media for good, and building platforms and educational um, um, avenues for empathy, for emotional intelligence, and hoping that even all of the academics, that all the schooling, from young to college, high school, whatever have you, that there's some level of strategic coursework in emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
and empathy, that down the road, when we see from today, we see 10 years down the road, and so many different institutions do have that as a foundation. I think we're going to see a better society. We're going
Yeah.
to see other countries marking this and saying, "Yo, this is definitely something we need to get behind." We just got to figure out how do we maintain. I don't believe capitalism is going anywhere, so it's like we have to figure out how to maintain both. You know,
Yeah.
um, but right now, again, unless somebody's done the research, I have not seen it. That how do you um, employ empathy without exploiting, without capitalizing off someone's pain,
Yeah.
frustration, mental health. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I could go on and on about that. Um, but I think we need to work towards that. I
Yeah.
think that that's something that we have to focus on.
I mean, I can just see your work going in so many directions. Like if we talk about Black men and responsibility of
Mm,
Black men and leadership in their communities, I can see you anchoring some work in Morehouse, right? Where Black men
yeah,
are created, right? Well, why not add this aspect of empathy to their toolkit? Because they're coming
man.
in with, we want them to leave as healed as possible so they can go forth and do the best possible work in the future. I can
Yeah,
see you,
yeah,
if we want to go deeper, and this, listen, for everybody that's watching, this is all intellectual property, so you can't take
yeah.
this, right? We're dropping, but I would love to see your research extend and
Mm,
the focus be Black man, the blue mind. Do the
mm,
have blue mentalities, right?
mm,
Who treat Black the same way their white counterparts do when they go and serve. How does that
mm,
happen? And we're seeing that all over the place. We're seeing it more often that these Black men who aren't showing up as Black men, they're showing up as officers,
mm,
devoid of their race, their heritage, their history, their
mm.
experiences. That all that is muted, and they click that new button,
No,
and this
you're
is now.
onto something. Yeah. No, no, you're definitely onto something. And I think at the end of the day, yeah, you're absolutely right to see. And this is another piece here is where when we start looking at mental health, we start looking at the healing aspect and what that means. I mean, I hate that they turned into buzzwords a lot, but they're important. The healing is literally first to understand, you
Yeah,
know, after understanding, the action comes into
yeah,
play. And you're absolutely right on that because I think a lot of people don't step into that role if they have yet to forgive themselves and their past and things of that nature. They're going to feel hypocritical. They're going to feel like, I don't deserve to be in that. Look at what I did here. Look at what if this comes out or whatever. Man, listen, a lot of that is in the past, and I literally, guys would literally tell me that face to face. Whether we're just out and about, or I'm always wearing my brand everywhere I go. I don't even wear clothes anymore. So I look, I do not. I wear my brand, and then I wear these Zaya pants. My wife got this Zaya spot. I don't know. They got the best pants I've ever seen, but nonetheless, uh, every time I go out, I always, kid you not, every time I go out, a guy would be like, "Yo, what is that?" And that's what I want them to do. I want them to ask about it.
yeah.
And if I had $1 for every time I heard this, man, I did too much in my past to be up here trying to help somebody else. What? What? Like, well, let me just share with you what I've done. And you tell me,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But you're absolutely right, especially for Black men. Um, there's we need more of us. I'm about to start a podcast called EQ Conversations. It drops next week, so I'm excited about that. But uh, I dedicate a segment to MISW, Men in Social Work, and it's the
Mm.
recruitment of getting more Black men into the field of social work, becoming therapists, taking on that role in everything. And I point out these things that we not only lack, but we think that we're not qualified to do,
Yeah.
because society expects us to be one other side, right? But be as it may, I think moving forward, yeah, as this information, this research grows, I think the potential and possibilities, just what you were alluding to, I think that would be phenomenal, actually. You know, um, and that's at the
Oh, just
foundational level as well.
I'm excited. I told you guys at the
Huh.
beginning, I'm excited to have this conversation. It's just, I think it's so needed for everyone, but specifically
Yeah,
in our community. It's just a
in our
necessity
communities, definitely.
that we do this. Let's shift a little bit and let's have a conversation a little bit about BDN. How long have you been with us? Like, what have you enjoyed? What are you looking forward to as a member?
Oh man. So the material, first of all, is phenomenal. The interviews are awesome as well. I joined BDN back in 2022. I One of the things I love about BDN is the networking aspect. I have pulled you won't believe how many LinkedIn people I've reached out to. I'm like, oh, I'm telling on myself now, but nonetheless, it was because of BDN, though.
Yeah.
In all actuality, and really linking up with other individuals of like-minded. belief systems, understanding what the role and responsibility we have in our culture and our society as Black men, Black women, and what we can do to spearhead our communities forward. So I think BDN just offers it offers an umbrella,
Yeah.
if you will, of these ideas and individuals. So I think the networking is the biggest piece for me, and then also the literature that comes through email. I shared the writing course with my wife, encouraging her to go get a doctorate. Like it's like, hey, because our sorority sisters tell my wife is a AKA, and we were at a black and gold ball. I'm an alpha, so we were at a black and gold ball, and she what two of her sorors just finished their doctorate, and I was just like, man, check out this BDN. I pulled it up on them. I was like, oh, writing course here, because that's her biggest thing. Like, oh, I don't want to write, and I was like, trust me, you get through it. And so I just think it's a wealth of knowledge, wealth of information, and it's a one-stop shop, I think, and that we can go to, not only to learn but to get inspired as well, and to get motivated, right? And plus to add more tools into my discipline track as well. I need places like BDN, and the intellectuals that are a part of that community. I need their feedback. I need them to hold me accountable as well. And so that's the next phase, I think, in BDN as well. Is like the accountability piece for us is, okay, we're more than just getting a degree,
Yeah.
right? It's like BDN push you to the fire. It's like, okay, now apply it. Let me see how you're applying it,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh snap.
Yeah.
So even just doing this interview in my mind, I'm thinking, I gotta go hard even more now. Seriously. I mean, because
It's out there.
it's that's just the platform that's what it
Yeah.
holds. That's what's there. There's no way you can turn back from this, like, I ain't doing nothing, kind of thing. So I think, in a nutshell, yeah, I have enjoyed being a part of the network. And so I do, again, thank you. Hats off to you guys,
Yeah.
for creating this space. It's definitely needed.
And I think one of the things that we try to do, number one, is push out that we have Black experts in multiple fields
Yeah,
across this country. But when you watch these interviews and you listen to these stories and you hear the work people are doing, it pushes you just because it's so motivational. You're like,
yeah,
if they could
yeah,
do it, I could do it. And so we're just
yeah,
really, without saying it, we're just inspiring people to continue to be more responsible, create,
exactly,
act, and do. Change
exactly.
has to happen, and if from nowhere else, it has to come from people like us because we've done the
Change
work.
makers is important. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point there. And honestly, and the crazy thing is, I didn't know about the program before, the BDN before I finished my doctorate. Um, I wasn't really on social media either, but nonetheless, afterwards, now I see it even more. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah,
as far as as far as more Black doctors like literally taking a stance in different, they really are going further in their skill set. And so to me, yeah, you actually, yeah, you started something here. Definitely, definitely.
Well, I'm excited. Again, thank you for taking time out to have this conversation. I think it's a powerful conversation. I definitely
Thank you.
want to extend this, right? When your book
Yeah.
drops, let's come back and let's really go through
Yes.
the book, right?
Yes. Yes,
I think
definitely.
it could be a workshop within itself.
It will have to be
And so,
because it's good. I think it's going to be powerful. If people are about action, then this book is going to be powerful.
yeah,
If
yeah,
people are just about feeling good, this book won't be for you. I promise you. If you're not ready to move past the triggers and accept that these buttons is what's really causing the problem, then yeah, don't read that book. No. But if you're ready, yeah, you're going to see. I honestly believe they will take action.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now listen, if you're not ready, you can still buy it and give it to somebody else, people. So remember, get it as a gift and share it with somebody else.
True. That is true. Because this is all me. I don't have any back team and I don't have none of that. I'm literally doing this on my own. My writing, I mean, I got my proofreaders and all of that, but nonetheless, just the work behind it, the logistical piece behind it and everything is all me. And I'd rather have it that way, to be honest. Because it definitely taught me a lot. You know, writing definitely teaches you a lot. I mean, we talked about this, and you know, writing a book is definitely, it's tough. You know, people think you can just push these things out. That other book, I do want to tell you, that other book, Empathy Has No Rank, that was inspired from my lack of empathy in the military.
Wow.
Right. And so that's where that book is coming out this summer as well. But Empathy Has No Rank. But the rank can literally be, this book can really be for anyone in leadership positions. You know what I mean? And because it teaches you step by step when you're in a leadership role, how empathy plays a role in that, you know? And so it was just something I had to learn the hard way. And it humbled me to the point where I said, you know what? If I did it and I lacked awareness, I know others. And sure enough, man, it's everywhere. So yeah, Empathy Has No Rank. That's going to be the third book that's going to be dropping. But Men and Her are going to be, those are going to be my babies there. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, listen, I want you guys to connect with Dr. Lay. So, Dr. Lay, tell people where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing.
Yes. So my LinkedIn is the quickest way. I am working on I'm doing my website myself. I know some people would be like, dude, no. But I'm on Wix doing it myself. And so my website is not up yet, but once it does, LinkedIn is where I can be reached for any questions you have, questions about the academy, questions about my empathy certification course, questions about the book, you know, especially about her. A lot of my wife's sorority sisters really, they were diving in. I let them see the topics that's going to be discussed, because you know, whatever. But so yeah, any questions you have for me, you can definitely reach me on LinkedIn at Raheem Lay. LinkedIn, you know, just put in Raheem Lay and you'll find me. But once my website and everything is designed and doing all that good stuff, I'm super excited about it. So.
Well, listen, guys, go and connect with Dr. Lay. You won't be disappointed, trust me. Stay tuned. More is coming. He's going to drop it there, and he'll share all the information when the time is right. While you're there, please be sure to connect with the Black Doctoral Network as well on all of our social media channels. We would love to share with you. We have tons of resources, tons of events and programming that we have that we think you would be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Dr. Lay, thank you so much for sharing your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deep thinking that you have has just been an amazing experience. Guys, I'll be back next week with another guest. I never come to disappoint, so please stay tuned. I'll see you next week. But until then, like I always say, be safe, be blessed, and I'll see you soon.